Well, this was inevitable. The meme language episode, Darmok. To be honest, this is one of the most memorable episodes simply for the sheer weirdness of it. It has several things in it that are really cool, and several things that you later on forget got introduced in this episode. Like, things that got introduced, like Robin Leffler is actually in this episode. See, apparently the production crew had wanted to use her in more episodes than just 2. However, they only managed to fit her into 2 episodes. Which is shocking because of just how much people remember the character. She was only in 2 episodes. See, the game, she had a really big role in it, and she was apparently added to Darmok as an afterthought, but it was her first appearance. So, from a storytelling standpoint, it's like, hey, here's a new character that we might see again later. Then there's this son of a... See, the Tamarians know about this thing. Somehow. We don't know how, but the Tamarians knew this thing existed. I'm going to guess because the Tamarians had surveyed this planet in more detail than the Federation had. Or at the very least, that particular Tamarian, Dathan, had. And of course, what exactly this thing is, we don't actually know. It's one of those like weird monster of the week things where the character's like, huh, never seen that before. And then you're left wondering what exactly it was. But the script's definition emphasizes the fact that it's a creature that appears as like a shimmer in the air and something that's hard to even be sure where it is. Anyway, though, but yeah, so the Eladril 4 entity as a monster of the week, it was a cool idea. Honestly, looking back at the episode, it was probably the coolest part of the episode. No, I don't like the Tamarian meme language. I know, some people think it's a cool idea. Me personally, I look at it from a practical standpoint of, yes, people talking in memes is totally a thing. A race that is incapable of communicating without speaking in memes is batshit. I cannot imagine anyone actually having that as their sole means of communication, which of course is where the plot falls apart. The entire premise of the language barrier between the Federation and the Tamarians is in the fact that the Tamarians are seemingly incapable of speaking anything that the Federation can translate. Which is one of those things where it's like, okay, having the automatic translator computer thingies be unable to properly translate Tamarian memes. Totally workable idea. Having language issues where you can't reliably understand what the Tamarians are saying because of the fact that they regularly use Tamarian memes instead of real words. Again, great idea. Totally works. Having the Tamarians be completely unable to speak in anything other than meme doesn't make sense because the explanation of how the meme language works requires you to learn a non-meme language first, because the meme phrases only make sense if you know the words that the meme phrases are made out of. If the meme phrases are just random sounds to the person who's hearing them, it's not a meme. It's just really, really long words. And in that regard, the automatic translator would probably, well, it would probably have great difficulty simply due to length of words. Although, from what I've gathered, that's not an issue with the Shellyak, and the Shellyak language apparently in some way has a degree of precision that makes most languages seem simplistic by comparison. The writers, of course, did not explain how the Shellyak language has that level of precision, just that it does. To be honest, though, the whole idea of, or aesthetic of the Tamarians is pretty cool. Like, it's a race that actually does something that's different than the rubber forehead thing. It's like, yes, you do have a pretty extensive cosmetic thing. The costumes are a pretty cool design, too. And so on and so forth. Yeah, Dathan getting killed as part of the whole thing, fighting the beast, well, whatever. I kind of figured that that was going to happen the first time I saw the episodes, because you're not going to have a monster of the week and sell the monster of the week as being uh, a serious threat without someone getting killed. And they're not going to do that with Picard. Although... Anyway, though, that's the thing about the episode that really, really bugged me the first time I saw the episode back in the 90s when I was a teenager. Why can't the Tamarians learn English? Presumably there's no reason they can't. Simple as that. The episode forces Picard to learn to speak Tamarian, which ultimately is a cool idea to set up a reason for Picard to speak Tamarian. That's actually not a bad idea. However, the problem is the in-universe logic dictates that the Tamarian guy should be capable of learning English, and thus not need to go through all of this time and effort. Why are the Tamarians forcing Picard to learn English, or learn Tamarian, when they could easily learn English? Well, yeah. When you look at the episode from that perspective, the explanation for why plot had to happen fails horribly. Thing is, aside from that, it was a really cool idea. And like, if you're doing this in a TTRPG, setting up a language barrier, there is actually a second option for this. And that is that the automatic translating software that is used by the Federation needs to have a basis of comparison when attempting to translate text or spoken words. It needs some information about the language being spoken. So something that is a language that has never been seen by the Federation before, and thus has no information in the database, you would need to figure out the basic structure of the language before you can attempt to translate it. And that is something that gets ignored in most episodes. However, it's come up enough that it's established as a concept in universe. So if you want to have a episode where the heroes need to actually learn the language spoken by the alien of the week, sure, go for it. Heck, using what is in real life foreign grammar is actually a good idea because like the whole like talking like Yoda thing, and there are places in the world where that's considered normal grammar. And like many real world languages, what makes them different from each other is the way that they handle grammar. Like a significant difference between German and English is that German likes to concatenate adjectives onto the words that the adjective is meant to modify. So, which is why you have things like automobile. It's attaching auto to mobile as a way to combine a word. And anyway, though, but yeah, coming up with a new variation of that, or just something that's a weird quirk that makes it hard for the translator to figure things out. Because real world languages have some very, very strange quirks when you go into them. And I mean, just looking up something that would make it hard for people to figure it out. Because, like, for example, like real world languages, you have things that are glyph based languages where each symbol is an entire word. Then you have languages that are alphabets, like English has. And then you have other things, like Abugida, where it's a language where you have symbols that are arranged into words, but the symbols aren't letters. No, the symbols are actually combinations of smaller symbols. Like the way that it works in the Devanagari script that is used in India for the Hindu language. Devanagari is written so that you have a consonant sound, and there's a mark added to the consonant sound to modify it with a vowel sound that, if when pronounced, will follow the consonant sound. Thus, that method of constructing words is fundamentally different than what you have in, say, English, because that's just not how it works. Oh, and other interesting things like that. But again, like the whole like talk like Yoda thing is the simplest example of alien grammar. Anyway, going back to the Tamarians and not worrying about the linguistic stuff, because realistically, in TTRPGs, unless you have people who actually are like serious amateur linguists, they're probably not going to want to actually do deductive reasoning to figure out what the aliens are talking about. Other things. So, Tamarian technology. Tamarians actually have some pretty cool tech. And the vessel that Dathan had is actually pretty close in capabilities to the Enterprise D overall. Different weapons, different defenses, so on and so forth, but overall power level is pretty close to the same. And a one-on-one fight between the two ships, in an actual combat situation, hard to say which would win. But yeah, it's like at one point they disabled the shields of the Enterprise, but if I remember right, the Enterprise wasn't actually trying to. I don't know. Oh yeah, that's right. It's like the particle scattering field. That was actually something they did so that the crew of the Enterprise couldn't just beam Picard back to his ship. And that was actually the reason why they opened fire on the Tamarians in the first place, which obviously the Tamarians didn't like. Anyway, though, so yeah, the whole concept of the Tamarians not being able to talk to the Federation. Ah, as a thing that you can put into a first contact scenario, that's actually a good idea. It really is. Like, communication barriers in first contact scenarios are one of the biggest things to consider. It's just that in Star Trek, we usually don't actually see the first contact scenarios. They might come up or they might not. But the case of the Tamarians is actually a race that the Federation had apparently been having periodic meetings with for years, and just no one had ever figured out how to talk to them. Don't ask me how that works. I already told you how um illogical I find the entire thing, but whatever. Oh yeah. Yeah, but yeah, cool monster. One thing that's not explained in the episode is well, anything about the monsters, shall we say biology and habitat. Is this the only one? Or is this basically just the planet's alpha predator species that stalks the world? Are there dozens of these things scattered around the planet? We don't know. To be honest, though, the idea that maybe possibly there are dozens of them, that is an interesting one. Oh, well. Anyways, anything else? Oh, yeah. One of the interesting things with Tamarians is that they do more than the rubber forehead. They also do rubber fingers. Yeah, this is a distinctive characteristic of Tamarians. They have fingernails on four. Then they have this weird cone-shaped thing on the thumb. Also, these things are seemingly the a standard issue sidearm for Tamarians. Because, people are quick to point out that Klingons usually have some sort of bladed weapon on them. Well, in this episode, it was shown that that's actually normal for Tamarians too. Tamarian military people have it normal to have some sort of dagger with them. Also, one thing that's notable about this Tamarian dagger in the episode is that this is a dagger made from a high-tech space alloy. It's not something that is like ordinary steel. What exactly the Tamarians make them out of is unclear, but it does seem as though these daggers are designed to be able to stab force fields. Yeah, that's not something that got explained well. Also, the Tamarian captain seemed to know how to bait the creature into making itself visible and was trying to talk Picard into double teaming the monster. So it's entirely possible that the Tamarians actually know quite a lot about the Aladral monster. Which, well, I mean, they're a space-faring civilization with technology that is pretty close to the level of the Federation, so it does make sense that they have done in-depth scientific surveys of quite a number of planets. The logic they had, like that, from an in-universe perspective, though, of blades made from a metal that's seemingly designed for cutting into energy fields, does explain why the Tamarians carry daggers, though. because, you know, like, oh, there's a force field blocking the pathway. Stab it. Not something a Federation person would think of, but hey, it okay, that's part speculation on my part. But the monster's bioelectric field seemed to propel everything except the dagger blade. And of course, Dathan chose those daggers as the weapon to use to kill the monster. So again, seems like a reasonable conclusion to me, even though we don't actually have an explanation. Oh yeah, here's another thing. Uh, Decorative thingies that we don't actually know what they're for, but they're something that the Tamarians decorate their uniforms with. Yeah, that's actually one of the things about the Tamarians that's one of the coolest things is that they spent a lot of time aesthetically designing Tamarians and Tamarian stuff. Which, environmental storytelling, since the Tamarians don't actually talk to people in a way that they can understand. Like I mentioned before, it's hard to understand exactly why the Tamarians do their... because the Tamarians don't tell us for the most part. Anyway, so what do we know about Eladril 4? Because realistically, setting a TTRPG session on Eladril 4 is absolutely something you could do. So let's do a quick rundown. It is not... it was not at this time actually claimed by any race, so there is no native population unless you count the monsters. Whether the monsters are actually intelligent is hard to guess. Due to the behavior, we didn't really have a good way to get a feel for that. Okay, the wiki claims that they're a non-sentient species. Is that actually... whatever. We don't know. Probably not. Because we don't ever see them do any complicated stuff, but it's possible that they just don't like it. That would actually be an interesting cultural quirk, is that a race that has the ability to become invisible would presumably like to avoid leaving traces of themselves behind when they're doing invisible stuff. But yeah, it's like the Tamarians overall were not hostile, and the entire reason for Eladril was so that they could force Picard to fight the monster. And I think that's about it. It's not really a huge amount of stuff to go into with this episode. It introduces several cool things, and the meme language. And I personally think the meme language is a dumb idea. Alrighty then, see you later.